Hare Krishna, this is Caitanya Carana dasa coming to you live from Srila Mayapur. We're continuing on with the discussion of Srila Prabhupada's 4-point formula. Today we're discussing utility is the principle. Let's start with our praise to our spiritual masters. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Caitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So today we're discussing a very important and significant aspect of our Krishna consciousness, which is utility is a principle. And we'll begin by just discussing what is the meanings of these two words, utility and principle. So utility, as defined in the dictionary, English dictionary, is being useful, profitable or beneficial. Being useful, profitable or beneficial. And principle means a fundamental truth that serves as a foundation for a system or belief. So at the beginning of chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks a question. He asks, if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work, why do you want me to fight? Why do you want me to engage in this gross activity, this gory warfare? Because just previous to that in chapter 2, Krishna had instructed Arjuna about in jnana, and he used the argument of jnana to defeat Arjuna's compassion. Arjuna's compassion was based on his bodily concept of life. It wasn't based on reality. Therefore, Krishna began to chastise Arjuna. Note that this only happened when Arjuna had surrendered to Krishna as a spiritual master by saying, Karpanya dosha pata sabhava. He is surrendering as a disciple. And at the end of that little surrender of Arjuna, the initial surrender, Krishna says, Ashochanan vashochastvam. He starts to chastise him and call him a fool actually. You are speaking like a pandit, but you don't know the basis of knowledge, which is that you are not this body, we are spirit, soul. So the beginning of the instruction of Arjuna is from chapter 2, text 11 onwards. So, Arjuna is taking the part of all of us. Arjuna is actually a representative of all of us. Arjuna is a self-realized soul. He is not short of anything in terms of his knowledge and his understanding. He is not in doubt, he is not in illusion, but he plays that part just so that questions that we may have or may have in the future are answered by Krishna. So he's just playing that role as somebody who is conditioned and does not know. So in chapter 2, Krishna presents the Buddhi Yoga. Buddhi Yoga is another name for Krishna consciousness. And it means intelligence in spiritual advancement. But Arjuna mistook this Buddhi Yoga, this intelligence, to be a retirement for an active life. And then again now, Krishna is going to present engaging in some activity. So Arjuna is in a bit of a dilemma, a bit of a quandary, a bit of a conundrum. How is it that Krishna, on one hand, is saying that knowledge is better and that activity should be given up? But Krishna explains in his answer to Arjuna's question that actually in that knowledge you act. Therefore, the title of chapter 3 is Krishna Consciousness, Karma Yoga, Activities in Krishna Consciousness, Action in Krishna Consciousness. So it's not that you give up action altogether, but you act in Krishna Consciousness. Arjuna was thinking that, Krishna Consciousness means to be retired from active life. No, it's not about avoiding your duty, renouncing your duty and your activity, and in Arjuna's case, renouncing fighting, and to live in the forest as a mendicant. This is not Arjuna's dharma. Arjuna's dharma as a Kshatriya is to fight. So therefore, a very interesting point is that this Bhagavad Gita, which is speaking about love of God, which is speaking about pure devotional service, which is speaking about love and peace, and includes something called the peace formula, this entire Bhagavad Gita was spoken to Arjuna on the battlefield where the gruesome war is going to take place. So Arjuna's question about the so-called contradiction is answered by Krishna in chapter 3. And Krishna speaks, chapter 3 was entitled Karma Yoga. Krishna continues with this explanation for some time. And we see in chapter 3, text 9, Krishna speaks a famous verse. He explains that work has to be done. It cannot be avoided. But work has to be done as a sacrifice for Vishnu. If work is not done as a sacrifice for Vishnu, it incurs sin, bondage, karma bandhana. So Krishna clearly explains that there is no question of giving up activity. Excuse me. It's not a question of giving up activity, but devoting that activity for Krishna's pleasure. So we see that we have to be engaged in service. We have to be engaged in devotional service, and that activity should be our prescribed duties for the pleasure of Krishna. Krishna instructs Arjuna, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction. That's for the Lord's satisfaction. Now here, very interesting point. Krishna is not just encouraging activity. If Krishna was just encouraging activity, he'll be encouraging karma. But Krishna is encouraging activity for his pleasure, for his satisfaction. And by giving pleasure to Krishna, by satisfying Krishna, automatically we are pleased, and then the true nature of activity, which means connecting to Krishna, this is going on. And if we understand what is pleasing to Krishna, what is favorable to Krishna consciousness, then that is how we determine what is useful, what is the utility of something. So the principle of utility is the principle, is understood to be that activity. We judge what is useful, what has utility, in relationship to how does that thing give Krishna pleasure. And that's actually the definition of surrender. You see, in the end of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 66, Krishna says, Sarvadharmam parityajan mamekam sharanam vraja aham tam sarvapapyebhyo mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. Krishna says, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I will deliver you from all sinful reactions, do not fear. So we are engaged in so many types of dharmas. Krishna knows that. He himself promoted and described so many dharmas in Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. But the conclusion, at the end of the book, Krishna says, abandon all of this. And what is pleasing to Krishna the most? Surrender to him. And he gives the assurance, don't be doubtful, don't be scared. Ma shuchaha, I will protect you. So in one letter to Tusta Krishna Prabhu, actually Tusta Krishna Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada wrote this letter in 23rd of August 1976 from Hyderabad. Srila Prabhupada says, we do not reject or accept anything until it has been seen in the light of our Krishna consciousness movement. Anything favorable for Krishna consciousness we accept, and anything unfavorable we reject. Anukulya sankalpa pratikulyam vivarjanam. So this is a quote from Prabhupada, which is given in a letter to his disciple, Tusta Krishna Maharaj. And it's very interesting, because here Prabhupada is saying that surrender is defined as accepting things favorable to Krishna consciousness and rejecting things which are unfavorable. Surrender. And this exact same shloka here, Anukalyasya sankalpa pratikulyam vivarjanam, is quoted in chapter 18, text 66 as well. And Krishna is speaking there. The theme of that verse, chapter 18, text 66, is surrendering to Krishna. This quote is actually from the Hari Bhakti Vilas, 11.676. So this is the process of Krishna consciousness. The ideal of Krishna consciousness, the goal of Krishna consciousness is actually to surrender to Krishna completely. And that takes some time because we have our attachments, we have our idea of what should be done and what should not be done. But surrendering means seeing things through a lens. Some of you may be wearing spectacles, glasses, and you have a tested glasses, which some people are like short-sighted. They have a lens to adjust that. Some people are long-sighted. They have a lens to adjust that. So the lens in your glasses, in your spectacles, is used to rectify your incorrect vision. So the lens of Krishna consciousness means we should see things through the lens of what pleases Krishna, to what means surrender. That is the lens. And if we see things to that lens, into what is pleasing Krishna, what is beneficial for my relationship to Krishna, that means surrender. Then there's one more lecture that Srila Prabhupada gave. This is about Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, text 1 to 5. This was given on the 20th of December 1968 in Los Angeles. Prabhupada says, there is no rejection of anything, but dovetailing everything. That is the process. Do everything but in Krishna consciousness. If you are a fighter, fight, but for Krishna. If you are a businessman, all right, do business for Krishna. If you are something else, do that for Krishna. That is wanted. This is called Krishna consciousness. To dovetail everything with Krishna, Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yukta Vairagyam Uchyate. Bhakti Rasamrita Sundar 1.2.255. Yuktam Vairagyam, real renunciation, is the dovetail everything for Krishna. That is real renunciation. So we may ask, if real renunciation means dovetailing everything for Krishna's service, what is not real? What is false renunciation? That is explained in the next verse of Bhakti Rasamrita Sundara 1.2.256. Krishna says, it is stated, Rupa Goswami says, Vairagyam Falgu, or false or artificial renunciation. It is useless or artificial renunciation, which means rejection of things which are related to Krishna. Now you may find in life, sometimes you're faced with a choice. How do you use this in Krishna's service? Can this be used in Krishna's service? And we need to discriminate. We need to decide, is this something that I'm using for my pleasure or for Krishna's pleasure? Is this something I'm using for my sense gratification or Krishna's sense gratification? This is very important, and one has to become expert in distinguishing what to use and what to use, not to use in Krishna consciousness. So this utility is a principle is speaking about this point, that use of something, how to use it, when to use it, when not to use it. This is called utility is the principle. So these two verses, 1.2.255 and 1.2.256, is from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sinju. And there, the discussion given by Srila Rupa Goswami is about accepting things which are favorable for the Krishna service. It's called Yukta Vairagya. And we will discuss this in detail later on in this presentation. I want to go on to a lecture by Srila Prabhupada. This is a lecture given by Prabhupada, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, text 1 to 2. And Prabhupada says here, nothing should be utilized for my sense gratification. Nothing should be utilized for my sense gratification. That is renunciation. I renounce the attitude of my sense gratification. That is renunciation, and that is my real position. So we see, last week I spoke about purity is the force, and one of the things that I mentioned was that when we align ourselves with the will of Krishna, that is purity. Apart from the purity of having a bath, putting on new clothes, even chanting Hare Krishna to purify consciousness, the main purity that has to be there in your life, in our lives, is to make sure that your consciousness is aligned with Krishna's consciousness. That's called Krishna consciousness. That's called the purity is the force. The more pure we are in consciousness, the more of a force we will be, and the more Krishna conscious we will be. So this is accomplished. You can chant Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This purifies the consciousness. This reminds us of our position of servant of Krishna. And the more we place more people in front of us in terms of serving, not that we serve Krishna directly. We become the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. And the more you put people in front of you in terms of serving Krishna indirectly, those are like lenses. And you know, according to physics, the more lenses you add in front of your eye, you can see something clearly. For example, in microbiology, they put several lenses, or you can see somebody taking a photograph with a long-range photograph. You need to have some very special zoom lens. It's very long, and inside this zoom lens is many lenses, one on top of the other, to make the thing look bigger and more clearer. So our real position is we are eternal Krishna, eternal servant of Krishna. It is said, Caitanya Charitamrita, Jivera Swarapa Hai Krishna Nitya Das, that our eternal position, which is always there, is we are servants of Krishna. And by aligning our consciousness to what is Krishna's consciousness, what is Krishna's will for us, aligning ourselves with that, that means proper renunciation. We renounce the idea of enjoying sense gratification separately of Krishna. Because you may think that, oh, I'm enjoying now. But that enjoyment is described in Bhagavad Gita as what's nectar in the beginning ends up like poison at the end. Because we are enjoying very temporarily. Actually, the real enjoyment comes from serving Krishna, the real pleasure, devotional service. And that is described in chapter 9, verse 2. Krishna says, Susukam kartum avyayam. That devotional service is joyfully performed and is everlasting. Even if you get something in this material world which is joyfully performed, some material act, it's temporary. You can't enjoy forever. Even that activity or even your birth, because you will die, the body will die. And then that activity in this body of yours, which is just for this birth, ends. But devotional service is susukam kartam avyayam. It's eternal, it's everlasting, and it is giving pleasure to the performer. So in that same lecture, Bhagavad Gita 5.1 to 2, in a question and answer session, because you see, we may have a trouble understanding what should we give up, what can be used in Krishna consciousness and what cannot be used in Krishna consciousness. And this point of Yukta Vairagya, I'm going to discuss it just now, is a very debatable one. We need to understand it carefully before we can practice it. And Prabhupada gives some pointers here in this question and answer session. So the question from the devotee was, if we have some force, some energy from Krishna, how do you utilize it in Krishna's service? So Prabhupada says, you utilize the force rightly, just like you use fire as a force. Now you can utilize it for the purpose of illumination or cooking or so many ways. But if you put that fire on your cloth, that is not utilization. That is not proper utilization. That is misuse. You can put this fire on your cloth and you can die. The fire can do that, but that is not the utilization of this fire. So we see the proper use of something is very good. Prabhupada gives example of fire. You can take that fire, you can use it to, light up a lamp, a ghee lamp, to do arti, to illuminate your house, a paraffin lamp to illuminate your house, a ghee lamp to illuminate your house. Or you can take that light and light the fire of your cooking place and cook with that fire. You can take that fire and burn up some brush, some cut dead branches of trees and weeds in your garden, and you want to burn that up, or some paper, some refuse, you can burn it with that. You can use the, fire to burn up a body after it's dead. In Vedic culture, we cremate the body. So like this fire had its utility, it can be used. But say let's you take that fire and put it on your clothes. The Prabhupada says that is not the proper utility of fire. It can burn you, you can get injured or you can die. So that is not the proper utilization of fire. So then Prabhupada goes on to say in that same purport, first of all you must be expert in how to use everything for Krishna. Then that is possible. We have to become expert in how to use things for Krishna's service. Now you may argue, but I don't know. I'm not expert in using things in Krishna's service. What do I do? How to know how to utilize things properly? Prabhupada explains then you have to take the help of the association of the expert spiritual master. Now in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 34, Krishna says, Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena seve upadikshita gyanam ganinas tattvadarshinaha. Krishna is saying that just try to learn the truth by approaching a bona fide spiritual master. Render service to him and inquire confidentially and submissively. These wise and learned souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So, we don't have the answers to all the questions. We may not know how to utilize things properly in Krishna's service. But then we ask or we inquire submissively from the spiritual master, Guru Maharaj or Maharaj or Prabhu, how do I use this in Krishna's service properly? Because we are not in knowledge. We come to this world in ignorance, and that's why we pray to the spiritual master. What is that? Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshushunmilitam Jaina Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. We stated that we are born in the darkness of ignorance, and the spiritual master opens the eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. So if you go into a darkened room, you don't know anything. You cannot even see your hand in front of your face in the night, in the dark room. But by the torchlight of knowledge, the spiritual master can illuminate our path and show us what is what. And we need to make use of that expertise. Spiritual master is expertise. One of the qualities of a pure devotee is daksha. Daksha means expert. And the spiritual master will direct you what to do and what not to do. So I was thinking of one classic example that Srila Prabhupada gave of utilizing things. Utility is the principle. And I thought of the body itself. We know that we are spiritual souls who are occupying this material body. And the material body is a bad bargain. Srila Prabhupada says that the material body is a bad bargain. What does it mean? That means we had a body which was Satchid Ananda, full of knowledge, eternality and bliss. And in exchange, we have got this material body, which is full of ignorance, unhappiness, and temporary. It's a temporary body. So if you exchange something which is eternal, blissful and full of knowledge for something which is ignorant, short-lived and unhappy, that's a bad deal. That's a bad bargain. And Srila Prabhupada acknowledged that this is a bad bargain. But Srila Prabhupada says we must make the best use of a bad bargain. So I would say, in trying to apply the teachings of this verse, utility is the principle. The first thing that we need to do is to understand that the material body is something that is to be used in Krishna's service. Many times we see that devotees neglect their bodies. Sometimes you, as students at university and college, you may not eat properly, you may not get enough rest because you're studying, you may not sleep enough, and all of these things are not beneficial for the body because the body needs to be maintained like a machine. Let's say, for example, you have a car. If you have a car, a motor vehicle, just putting petrol in that car is not enough. You need to change the oil regularly, check the oil, change the spark plugs, check the tire pressure, change the tire tubes if there's a need, service the engine, make sure that the body doesn't have rust, clean the interior of the car, keep it free of bugs and things like this, and regularly maintain that car. So in the same way, this vehicle of the car, body, which is just a vehicle for the soul, has to be maintained by proper practices. Now interestingly enough, in this regard to the body, Srila Prabhupada says, we should take care of our life in the following way, in this order. He said, health, sadhana, preaching. So you may think, what? Sadhana comes second, preaching comes third? You may think, but Prabhupada, you yourself said, preaching is the essence. So why is preaching not number one? Why is sadhana before preaching? Why is health before preaching? Well, sadhana is before preaching because you have to be healthy in terms of your spiritual life, having chanted 16 rounds, following the 4 regulative principles, to have some potency. Without that potency, your preaching will not have any effect. And we said last week Purity is the force. So for your preaching to be effective, you have to have purity. And to be pure, you have to follow the regulated principles and chant Hare Krishna 16 rounds a minimum. And then also, we have to take care of the body, because the body is used as a vehicle for us engaging in devotional service to the Lord. If one is disembodied, how are you going to serve the Lord? So I'm thinking of a pastime, very nice pastime, of the body being a vehicle and an instrument. And this happened in the Caitanya Charitamrita. In the Caitanya Charitamrita, this is a very clear elaboration of how utility is the principle. Srila Sanatana Goswami was traveling from, excuse me, I'm not sure where he's coming from, but he was going to Puri. And he was going to meet Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Puri. So on his way to Puri, he avoided the regular path on which all the pandas and servitors of Lord Jagannath will go, because he felt by walking on the same place as Lord Jagannath's servitors, he was contaminating that place. He was so humble, he was feeling that he was contaminating that place. So he took a back road, I think along the sands of the beach, and the sand was blistering, blazing hot, and it scalded his feet. His feet were like scalded and burnt, and he had no clean water to drink, and as a result he drank contaminated water. When he drank this contaminated water, he contracted a disease which made his entire body break out into sores. And these were not ordinary sores, they were itchy sores, and when he scratched on these sores, they produced a pus. So he was feeling terrible that I am coming here all the way to Puri. I've avoided the main road because I'm trying to honor Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Jagannath's servitors. I don't want to cross their path. And here, look at me, I've got all these diseases on my skin. How will I see Lord Chaitanya? Then he's thinking, I feel that this body is useless to serve Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So what I will do, when Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra chariot comes onto procession, I will jump onto the road and come under the wheels of Lord Jagannath's chariot, and the chariot wheels will crush me, and in this way I'll give up my life. Then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Sanatan, I know what is your plan. Of course, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a super soul, is dwelling in everybody's heart, he will know everything. So he says, Sanatan, I know what you're going to do. And you cannot do that. You cannot kill that body of yours, because that body belongs to me. See, Sanatan has surrendered to the spiritual master, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when you surrender to the spiritual master, you offer him your very body. You give him your very self. And therefore, how could Sanatan take his own life? So this is a classical example of how to use a bad bargain, make the best use of a bad bargain. And you know, afterwards, Sanatana Goswami was healed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he became a great ambassador for Krishna consciousness. One of the books that we quoted from now, Hari Bhakti Vilas, was written by Sanatana Goswami. So, if we don't know what is to be done and what is not to be done in terms of utility of things, we should always ask the spiritual master. Maybe not directly our Guru Maharaj, our spiritual master, our Diksha Guru, but our Siksha Gurus, senior devotees. Always ask. And this is how to avoid making some mistake and causing some blunder in your life. So now I thought I'll just open up the discussion to you all. If you have some ideas how things can be utilized in the service of Krishna, dovetailed in the service, proper use the word dovetailed in the service of Krishna, things can be used in Yukta Vairagya, please list them in the comments and we'll discuss them. And while we're waiting for your comments, I would like to say that there's a few things which can be used in the service of Krishna which could be a gray area. So I'm going to talk about those now. In the meantime, I'll wait for your comments where you are suggesting online topics which we can discuss in terms of utilities of principle. So the first thing I thought about in terms of Yukta Vairagya is Varnashram Dharma. So as you know, society is divided into 8 categories, 4 social orders and 4 spiritual orders. The 4 social orders are Shudra, the lowest, Vaishya, Brahmana, Shudra, Vaishya, Kshatriya and Brahmana. These are the 4 social orders. And then there's the 4 spiritual orders, which is Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyasi. So these 8 altogether make up what is called the Varnashram system. So in Krishna consciousness, the Varnashram system is also there, but it's called Devi Varnashram. Now before I get into an elaborate discussion of Varnashram Dharma, the reason I must explain to you I'm doing this is because this is an example of where utility as a principle can be applied. In this, one of the verses that I discussed today, chapter 5 of Bhagavad Gita, verses 1 and 2, Prabhupada is giving a lecture, and he speaks of, in those verses it speaks that people who should not renounce artificially or soon. Actually, they should be thoughtful to make sure that the sinful propensity are cleansed. And Krishna explains that the sinful propensities of man can be cleansed by himself engaging in prescribed duties. And prescribed duties means Varnashram Dharma. So, Varnashram Dharma, according to your psychophysical makeup, you are placed into a certain Varna and Ashrama. You may be best suited to be a Brahmachari. So, be a Brahmachari. You may best be suited to be a Grihastha. So, be a Grihastha. So, we have a question here from our way of Mayapur. One's job can be dovetailed into Krishna consciousness. I'm going to answer that now. I just want to finish my point, which I was saying. That, according to your proclivity, you may have certain inclinations. Like somebody is inclined to Brahmanical qualities. He may go into the occupation of being a teacher, or a preacher, or a student. Somebody who is inclined to celibacy and living alone and doing service in the ashram, he be inclined to be a brahmachari. Somebody is inclined to administrate, he may be a kshatriya. Somebody is inclined to do business, he be inclined to be a vaishya. Somebody is inclined towards household life, he may be a grihastha. So in this way, according to your psychosocial makeup, you may be categorized into different types of varnas and ashramas, and this is called your swadharma. So your swadharma is referring to your temporary identity in this birth, in this body, and accordingly you can get some position. But in the purport of chapter 2, text 31, Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says that Varnashram is a stepping stone. Now, if you're going into some English garden, you'll see that there's some stones arranged in such a way that you step on the stone to get to the next stone. That's called a stepping stone. So the reason for the stepping stone is for you to get to the next step. It's not like you take a step and you stay on that stone. You can move to the next stone and the next stone, and that's where you make progress. So Varnashram Dharma is to facilitate your progress to Krishna consciousness. It is the means, it's not the goal. So sometimes people get caught up, oh, I'm a brahmachari for life, I'm a grihastha for life, I'm a brahman for life, I'm a sudra for life, I'm a vaishya for life. No, these are temporary designations, and one must understand that they assist in us getting to the goal of Krishna consciousness, but they do not replace our Krishna consciousness. They can be used. Utility is the principle. They can be used, but that's not the goal. So let me go to the question or the comment by this devotees, IY of Mayapur. Hare Krishna to you. It says, one's job, how can one's job be dovetailed in Krishna consciousness? Prabhupada answers that in one of the lectures that I quoted. For example, Arjuna was a warrior, is a fighter. So Prabhupada says, if you're a fighter, fight, but fight for Krishna. If you're a businessman, do business, but do that business for Krishna's pleasure. If you're a teacher, teach for Krishna's pleasure. Now, this is a very important question because not everybody in the ISKCON movement, the Hare Krishna movement, is living in the ashram. Not everybody is a brahmachari. Not everybody is a sannyasi. Not everybody is a vanaprastha staying in a temple. Many The majority of devotees in the Hare Krishna movement are grihastas. So one's job and how to make it related to Krishna consciousness, or if it is not related, dovetail it into Krishna consciousness, it's a very important discussion. So I'm glad that this question was asked. We must see how to use that service that we are doing for the Lord. I gave you examples of a Kshatriya, that's Arjuna, a businessman, and a Grihastha. So somebody may be a carpenter. So you take the money from your carpentry business and you use it in the service of Krishna. Or better still, you can take your carpentry skills and help design a temple. You can help to fit the altar. You can help to make benches for the altar. You can help make chairs for the altar, chairs for the temple, tables for the temple. You can help build a Rath Yatra cart. That reminds me of one important pastime, very, very important for ISKCON. And it gives a clear example of utility is the principle. So once, there is a devotee named Jayananda, and Jayananda Prabhu was building the Rath Yatra cart. Either New York or Los Angeles, I'm not sure. So Jayananda Prabhu was building the Rath Yatra cart, and along came a devotee named Jay. He wasn't a Hare Krishna devotee, he was just passing by and thinking, why are these guys knocking this wood together? What is he doing? So he came and stood to watch this Jay. And Jayananda Prabhu called him, excuse me sir, can you please come here? Can you please hold this nail while I knock it into this wood? So Jay came, he held the nail, and Jayananda knocked that nail in, and he says, wow, thank you so much, you held that nail so well. Do you think you can take this hammer and knock the nail also? So Jay said, okay, I can do that, I've knocked a nail. So Jay took the nail and he knocked the nail, and Jayananda Prabhu says, wow, that was really good. You're so expert in knocking nails. Would you like me to knock a few more? So by the end of it, that Jay had knocked so many nails, he helped finish building that Rath Yatra cart. And that Jay is today Srila Jayapataka Swami Maharaj. So there's an expert example, there's an ideal example of how an expert preacher can, by utility is a principle, engage devotees, engage people who are prospective devotees into the service of Krishna. So a devotee preaches, a preacher preaches according to time, place and circumstance, kala patra desha. And he must see how to adjust and use utility is a principle to use things in Krishna's service. Even devotees can be used in Krishna's service, as example of Jayapataka Swami Maharaj. And one has to be expert to know how to do that as a preacher. It's a quality of a preacher to know, to be able to, how to do that. So further to answer this question from IYF Mayapur, we must not see our job as separately from Krishna consciousness. We must not even see the job as a job. We must see the job as devotional service. And if we see the job as devotional service, we'll see it's connected to Krishna. For example, I mentioned about Arjuna, businessman, a brahmachari, a kshatriya. We must see all of these as connected to Krishna, and we'll be able to use these skills and activities in the job to serve Krishna, because at the end of it, when we get our salary at the end of the month, we can offer that to Krishna. If you can do some direct skill for Krishna with your job, for example, I mentioned carpentry, you can take that and do something for Krishna directly. But other than that, we must always screw our brains and think very expertly and deeply, how can we use this in the service of Krishna? While saying that, I must mention, there are certain occupations or jobs which cannot be dovetailed. It cannot be dovetailed. And these are intrinsically activities which have an envious nature towards Krishna and his creatures and his devotees. And I'll give you a good example. A butcher. Now a butcher, what is he doing all day? He's killing animals. He's inculcating pap. He's spreading the propagating of meat eating. It's a very sinful activity. That cannot be dovetailed in Krishna's service. First of all, that activity of killing animals is showing deep envy to Krishna. It's showing deep envy to Krishna's living entities, his parts and parcels. And Krishna will not support that. Krishna will not be pleased by that. So certain activities like killing for the tongue, like in terms of a butcher, or just like being like a mercenary warrior soldier who's just killing, what's to say, haphazardly and loosely without thought, that's not accepted. But somebody is a soldier for Krishna, somebody is doing something for Krishna's service, like Arjuna is a soldier for Krishna, that's acceptable. I hope that answers your question, IYF Mayapur. I'm inviting more questions from the other devotees who are online at the moment. Please give me, as I spoke, that Kamalendra Singh Rathod Prabhu gave an example. He said an example of Yukta Vairagya is a Mayapur community. I would like you to elaborate on that, Prabhuji, but let me see what I can say. So Mayapur, we see there's so many departments. We have electricity department, where people are dealing with just electric currents and working at the accounts for electricity, but that's in Mayapur, it's a department in Mayapur. We've got the land office, which is dealing with property. How is it dealing with Krishna? It's unrelated to Krishna, but because it's Krishna's property, used for Krishna's temple and Krishna's devotee, that's Krishna consciousness. That's an example of Yukta Vairagya. We see just recently, we see there's this Gauranga Gardens, and Gauranga Gardens is an example of where this zero waste management is gathering all the litter and garbages from Mayapur, which include a lot of plastic, and is trying to use them from the organic matter that's mixed to separate the organic matter and the plastics, and with that organic matter to make fertilizer. And they're actually growing a very lovely farm there, a very beautiful crops are being grown there, and the soil that's produced from there, the fertilizer is very, very rich in nutrients because of all that organic waste. So that's an example. You may think a rubbish dump and then planting, how is this going to do anything with Krishna consciousness? Well, those vegetables, 75% of those vegetables are used in the service of Radha Madhava. So here's an example of things, classic example of Yukta Vairagya and utility is a principle being done by these wonderful devotees in Gauranga Gardens. Then another department I can think of is Sankirtan department. So Sankirtan department is selling books. Selling books? How is that related to Krishna? Well, the books are about Krishna consciousness. By these boys going out to sell books is not just selling books. When those people receive the books, the people are receiving books from our book distributors, they will read the books, become inspired by Prabhupada's works, and become devotees of Krishna. Okay? So there's many, many other departments in Mayapur. There's a CDM, there's the finance department, there's the telephone department, there's so many other departments where you cannot see a direct connection to Krishna consciousness, but because it's being used in the service of Krishna, it's a good example. So Kamalendra Singh Rathod is a very good example to use the Mayapur community as an example. So here we have a comment by a devotee, Rahul Joya. He says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, how students use their studies for Krishna? That's an excellent example, Prabhu. Because you're talking to ISKCON Youth Forum, there's a lot of students here, and this is going to be a good discussion for you. Yes, Rahul Prabhu, what is the reason for your study? You are studying to become qualified. What is the reason for you to become qualified? You want a job. What is the reason for you getting a job? You want to earn money. What is the reason for you to earn money? You want to spend money living your life. But at the end of it all, if you spend that money for Krishna, for example, if you're a householder and you take care of your family with your money, if you raise up your family and maintain your house with the money, and if you give a percentage of your income, your salary, towards Krishna consciousness propagation, that is using the money of your job in Krishna's service. And you must make sure that you don't misuse that money by using it for illicit activities like drinking alcohol, meat eating, illicit sex, gambling. If you don't use your money for that activity, but you use the money for Krishna's service, that's the proper use of that activity. So you have a study, you are in college or university to study for a degree or a diploma to get a job, and you're getting a job because you want to earn money, and you want to earn money because you want to spend. But spend that money on Krishna's service. And then that is proper use of that money. And that also explains why you can study. How to study for Krishna. You study for Krishna because you know at the end of your studies, you get qualified, you get a job, you earn, and you give that money, some of that money to Krishna. So I hope that answers your question, Royal Joy Prabhu. I'm still waiting for more comments from some of you in terms of your ideas of Yukta Vairagya. I want to make one quotation from the Niti Shastra. The Niti Shastra is written by Chanakya Pandit Prabhu. And Chanakya Pandit, he gave examples of how you can do extreme Yukta Vairagya. So Chanakya Pandit says, a noble person, a wise man, can take nectar from a stalk of poison. He can take gold from a filthy place. He can marry a wife from an obscure background who's not very, like, want to say, culturally advanced, but at the same time she's moral and she's a good wife. And he can take advice from a person who's not formally educated. So all of these things, taking gold from a filthy place, taking nectar from a stalk of poison, marrying a woman who's from not a very socially advanced background, and taking advice from somebody who's not educated very well, you may think, why should I do this? This doesn't make sense. These people are not, this is not a proper place to take things. But the point is you see the utility in Krishna's service. We should always see, how can this thing, how can this item, how can this person, how can this situation be used in Krishna's service? And if we are very alert, and if we are trained by the spiritual master, we can see everything in relationship to Krishna. And that is the goal and success of life. Seeing everything in relationship to Krishna. Rahul Joy, you're welcome. So I'll end here. I don't want to force things. If there's no additional questions, we're not going to force things for extra time. There's no need to do that. I just want to conclude by saying that to understand how utility is the principle, we need to apply our intelligence and become expert in distinguishing what is useful and not useful, what can be accepted and rejected in Krishna's service. But at the same time, if we lack that intelligence, if we lack the ability to judge what is useful, what is not useful, what can be used, what cannot be used, what should be accepted, what should be rejected, if we lack that understanding and knowledge, we should consult with our spiritual master, our Diksha Guru, our Guru Maharaj, our Shiksha Gurus and senior devotees. And that is the way to do it. So we'll stop here. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.